welcome, and settle in comfortably. Tonight, we're going to spend some time together in the quiet world of medieval monasteries, where time moved slowly and the work was gentle, repetitive, and profoundly peaceful. Our journey will take us into the life of a monastery scribe, one of those patient souls who spent their days copying manuscripts by hand, letter by letter, line by line. There's no urgency here, no drama. Just the soft scratch of quill on parchment, the smell of ink and beeswax, and the filtered light through narrow windows. Let yourself breathe slowly as we step back in time, about 800 years ago, to a stone monastery somewhere in the English countryside. The year doesn't matter much. The season is autumn, perhaps, when the light comes golden through the leaves, and the air carries a gentle chill. Close your eyes if you wish. Imagine the thick stone walls, the arched doorways, the sound of distant bells marking the hours. Everything here moves at the pace of prayer and patience. The day begins before dawn, as it always does in the monastery. But there's no jarring alarm, no sudden awakening. Instead, the first bell rings softly in the darkness, a single, clear note that resonates through the stone corridors and gently calls the brothers from sleep. Our scribe, let's call him Brother Thomas, though his name doesn't matter much, opens his eyes in his small cell. The room is simple, a narrow bed with a straw mattress, a wool blanket, scratchy but warm, a wooden chest for his few possessions, and a small crucifix on the whitewashed wall. He rises slowly, unhurried. There's no need to rush. The rhythm of monastic life has been the same for centuries, and it will continue long after he's gone. He wraps himself in his habit, the long brown woolen robe that monks of his order wear. The fabric is rough against his skin, but he's long since grown accustomed to it. The stones are cold beneath his bare feet as he makes his way to the church for matins, the first prayer service of the day. The corridors are dark, lit only by an occasional candle in a wall sconce. He knows the path by heart, could walk it blindfolded. His hand trails along the stone wall, feeling the cool roughness of it. In the church, the brothers gather in silence. They file into their stalls in the choir, each man in his assigned place. The church is vast and dim, the vaulted ceiling disappearing into shadow above. A few candles flicker on the altar. The smell of old incense hangs in the air. Frankincense and myrrh, the scents of prayer. The service begins. The brothers chant the psalms in Latin, their voices blending together in a low musical drone. The words wash over everything like water, smooth and ancient. Brother Thomas knows these psalms by heart. He's sung them every day for 20 years. The rhythm is soothing, hypnotic. After matins comes Lauds, as the first grey light of dawn begins to filter through the narrow windows. Then there's a brief return to the dormitory, a few minutes to splash cold water on his face from the basin, and then back to the church for prime at sunrise. And still, Brother Thomas hasn't spoken a word. The rule of silence governs most of the day. Speech is permitted only when necessary, during certain hours, and then only quietly. The silence is profound, comforting. It's like a blanket wrapped around everything. After prime, the brothers file into the refectory for the morning meal. The refectory is a long, narrow room with wooden tables arranged in rows. High windows let in the growing daylight. The walls are whitewashed, plain except for a simple wooden cross at one end. The brothers sit on long benches, arranged by seniority. Brother Thomas takes his usual place about halfway down the table. He's neither the youngest nor the oldest here, somewhere comfortably in the middle of the community. The meal is simple. A thick slice of dark bread, made from rye and barley flour. A small piece of cheese, perhaps an apple from the monastery orchard, if the season permits. And weak ale to drink the water isn't always safe, so ale is preferred, brewed so lightly that it's barely alcoholic at all. Even during meals, silence is maintained. But the silence isn't empty. While the brothers eat, one of the younger monks stands at a lectern and reads aloud from scripture or from the lives of the saints. His voice is clear and measured, filling the hall. Brother Thomas chews his bread slowly, listening. The bread is coarse, a bit dry but wholesome. He breaks it into small pieces, taking his time. There's no hurry. The cheese is sharp and tangy. The apple is slightly mealy, stored since last autumn in the cellar, but still sweet enough. Around him, the only sounds are the gentle sounds of eating, the soft scrape of wooden spoons on wooden bowls, the quiet splash of ale being poured, the occasional creak of the benches as someone shifts position. And above it all, the steady voice of the reader, telling the story of St. Anthony in the desert. When the meal is finished, the brothers stand together and file out in silence, each man bowing to the crucifix as he passes. Now, finally, Brother Thomas makes his way to the scriptorium, the room where manuscripts are copied. This is his true home, the place where he'll spend most of his waking hours. The scriptorium is on the second floor of the monastery, positioned to catch the best light. It's a long room with a series of desks arranged beneath tall windows. Each desk is a scribe's workspace, and each scribe guards his space jealously, though gently, for even possessiveness is tempered by the rule of humility here. Brother Thomas's desk is near the middle of the room, positioned so that the morning light falls directly on his work surface. The desk itself is slanted, angled to make writing easier on his back and arms. It's made of oak, worn smooth by decades of use. Previous scribes have carved their initials into the underside where no one can see a small, secret vanity. He settles onto his stool, a simple wooden seat without a back. Over the years, he's learned to sit perfectly upright, his posture maintained for hours without conscious thought. It's become natural to him now, this stillness. Before him on the desk are his tools. To the right, several quills, goose feathers, carefully cut and shaped into pens. He made them himself last week, sitting in a patch of sunlight, using his small knife to cut the nib at just the right angle. The angle matters tremendously. Too steep, and the ink won't flow properly. Too shallow, and the strokes will be too thick. To the left, two small pottery vessels. One contains black ink, made from oak galls and iron salts mixed with gum arabic. The ink has a faintly metallic smell, sharp and distinctive. The other vessel contains red ink, made from vermilion or red lead, used for chapter headings and the elaborate initial letters that begin each section. In front of him, carefully positioned at the center of the desk, lies the manuscript he's currently copying. It's a book of hours, a collection of prayers and psalms meant for a wealthy patron in the nearby town. The original from which he's copying is propped up on a small wooden stand, held open by a weighted ribbon. And before him, blank and waiting, is a fresh sheet of vellum prepared calfskin, stretched and scraped until it's smooth and supple, the perfect surface for receiving ink. The vellum is precious. Brother Thomas knows exactly how precious. Each sheet represents hours of work by the monastery's parchmenter, the brother who prepares the skins. First, the calf must be slaughtered and its hide removed. Then the hide is soaked in lime water for days to loosen the hair. The hair is scraped away with curved blades. The skin is stretched on a wooden frame, scraped again and again until it's thin and uniform. Finally, it's rubbed with pumice to create a perfectly smooth surface. A single mistake, a single slip of the pen, and hours of work are wasted. But Brother Thomas doesn't think about this. Thinking about mistakes is the surest way to make them. Instead, he empties his mind and simply begins. Brother Thomas picks up a quill, dips it gently into the black ink, and taps it once against the edge of the vessel to remove excess. The morning light is clear now, streaming through the window and falling perfectly on his work. He pauses for a moment, quill poised above the vellum. Then, slowly, he begins. The first letter is a large initial, a decorated D to begin the phrase Domine labia, mea apris. O Lord, open my lips. This initial will be elaborate, filled with intricate patterns and perhaps a small illustration of a saint or an angel. But first, the basic form must be sketched lightly. He uses a lead point for this preliminary work, a small rod of lead mounted in a wooden holder. The lead leaves only the faintest mark on the vellum, a grey shadow that will be invisible once the ink is applied. With tiny, careful strokes, he outlines the shape of the letter. The curve of the D must be perfect, not quite circular, but oval, elegant. The vertical stroke must be straight and true. It takes him nearly 10 minutes just to sketch this preliminary outline. His hand moves slowly, surely, making tiny adjustments. A fraction of an inch too far to the left, and the proportion will be wrong. He's done this thousands of times before, but he never rushes. Each letter is a small prayer, a meditation. Once the outline is complete, he sets down the lead point and picks up his quill again. Now comes the actual ink work. He traces the outline, filling it in with smooth black ink. The quill whispers against the vellum, a soft, scratching sound like leaves moving in a gentle breeze. The ink flows from the quill in a controlled line, neither too thick nor too thin. Brother Thomas's hand is perfectly steady, guided by years of practice. He's developed a slight callus on his middle finger, where the quill rests the mark of his trade. Around him in the scriptorium, other scribes are engaged in their own work. The room is filled with the quiet sounds of their labour, the scratch of quills on vellum, the soft rustle as someone turns a page in their exemplar, an occasional small sigh, the creak of a stool as someone shifts position. No one speaks. The rule of silence is particularly strict here in the scriptorium, where concentration is essential, but the silence is companionable, shared. Each man is alone with his work, but together in the room. There's comfort in this. Through the window, Brother Thomas can hear the distant sounds of the monastery going about its business. The clang of a bell from the smithy, the low mooing of cattle being led to pasture, the sharp cry of a raven in the courtyard. But these sounds are far away, muffled, unimportant. His world has narrowed to the space directly in front of him, the vellum, the quill, the ink. He completes the outline of the initial letter and pauses to examine his work. The line is clean and sure. No blobs of excess ink, no tremors or irregularities. Good. He dips his quill again and begins to fill in the interior of the letter, with delicate patterns interlacing vines, small flowers, geometric designs. This work is even more delicate, requiring the finest of lines. Time passes. The sun climbs higher in the sky. The angle of light on his desk shifts gradually, imperceptibly. Brother Thomas adjusts slightly, maintaining the best illumination on his work. After perhaps an hour, though, he doesn't count the time, the initial letter is complete. Now he can begin the actual text. He moves his quill to the right of the elaborate initial and begins the second word, labia. The letters are smaller now, uniform in size and spacing. He's created guidelines for himself, faint horizontal lines scratched into the vellum with his lead point. These lines keep his text straight and evenly spaced. The writing must be perfect not for vanity, but because the word of God deserves nothing less than perfection. Letter by letter, word by word, he progresses. Labia mea apris. O Lord, open my lips. Etos meam annuntiebit laudem tuam. And my mouth shall declare thy praise. The Latin words are familiar, beautiful in their ancient rhythm. Brother Thomas murmurs them silently to himself as he writes, his lips moving slightly. The words and the action of writing become one prayer made visible, faith inscribed in ink. The morning continues in this peaceful rhythm. Brother Thomas works steadily, never hurrying, never pausing for long. His hand moves across the vellum in smooth, controlled strokes. Line after line, paragraph after paragraph. Every so often, he pauses to prepare his pen. The nib grows dull with use, and when the ink no longer flows cleanly, he takes up his small knife and sharpens the quill. This is a brief interruption, but even this has its own meditative quality. The careful scraping of the blade against the feather, the examination of the angle, the test stroke on a scrap of vellum kept for this purpose. The light shifts as the morning progresses. What began as a clear golden light becomes brighter, harsher, as the sun climbs toward noon. Brother Thomas squints slightly but continues his work. His eyes are good, not as sharp as they were when he was younger, but still adequate for the work. Some of the older scribes struggle with the small lettering, but he's not there yet. He's 42 years old, in the prime of his working life. As midday approaches, the bells begin to ring for sext, the noon prayer. Brother Thomas finishes the line he's working on, never end in the middle of a line, and carefully caps his ink pots with small wooden lids. He cleans his quill with a rag dampened in water, removing the excess ink. The quill will last several more days before it needs to be replaced. He stands slowly, stretching his back. There's a pleasant ache in his shoulders and neck, the ache of concentration, of work well done. He files out of the scriptorium with the other scribes, down the stone stairs, across the cloister, and into the church for the midday prayers. The service is brief, perhaps 20 minutes of chanting and prayer. Then it's to the refectory again for the main meal of the day. This meal is more substantial than breakfast. There's a thick pottage of vegetables and grains, barley, onions, cabbage, turnips, all simmered together with herbs from the monastery garden. There's more of the dark bread, still warm from the ovens. On Sundays and feast days, there might be fish, but today is an ordinary Wednesday in autumn, and the meal is simple. Brother Thomas eats slowly, gratefully. The pottage is hot and filling, warming him from the inside. The bread soaks up the thin broth. It's plain food, but good food, honestly made. He's never gone hungry in the monastery, not like he did in his childhood, before he came here as a young oblate. While the brothers eat, the reading continues. Today, it's from the Rule of St. Benedict, the ancient text that governs their lives. The reader's voice is soothing, the Latin words flowing over them all. After the meal, there's a brief period of rest. This is the warmest part of the day, and the brothers are permitted to nap if they wish. Brother Thomas returns to his cell and lies down on his narrow bed. He doesn't sleep, exactly, but enters a state of drowsy half-consciousness, his mind drifting. He thinks about the manuscript, about the pages he completed this morning. In his mind's eye, he sees the letters, perfect and black against the cream-coloured vellum. He imagines the finished book bound in leather, the pages crisp, the illuminations gleaming with gold leaf. He imagines it in the hands of the patron, who will use it for prayer, who will pass it down to children and grandchildren. His work will outlast him by centuries. This thought gives him a quiet satisfaction. Not pride, pride is a sin, but something gentler. The satisfaction of work done well, of service rendered. The afternoon session in the scriptorium begins after none, the afternoon prayer service. The light is different now, softer, more golden as it slants in from the west. Brother Thomas returns to his desk, settles onto his stool, and examines the morning's work. It's good. The letters are clean and uniform, the spacing consistent. The initial letter gleams darkly on the page, the decorative patterns intricate and delicate. He allows himself a small nod of approval, then turns to a fresh section of vellum and begins again. The afternoon work has a different quality than the morning. There's a sense of the day winding down, of time growing softer. The intense concentration of the morning has given way to something more relaxed, though no less careful. Brother Thomas's hand moves with the same precision, but there's a looseness in his shoulders now, a comfort. He works on a different section of the manuscript now, the ordinary prayers, the litanies, the hours. These don't require elaborate illuminations, just clear, readable text. In some ways, this is more challenging than the decorated work. When you're creating an elaborate initial letter, small imperfections can be hidden in the decoration, but plain text reveals everything. Each letter must be perfect. He writes in a script called Gothic textura, a formal, angular hand with thick vertical strokes and thin horizontal ones. The letters are packed tightly together, each one touching its neighbours, creating a dense texture on the page, hence the name textura, texture. It's beautiful but demanding. There's no room for error. The scratching of his quill joins with the scratching of the other scribe's quills, a chorus of patient labour. Brother Thomas finds himself falling into a kind of trance, the words flowing from his hand without conscious thought. His eyes move from the exemplar to the page, from the page to the exemplar. His hand moves in its practiced patterns. The letters appear on the vellum as if by themselves. Ave Maria, gratia plena. Hail Mary, full of grace. Dominus tecum, the Lord is with thee. He's copied these words 1,000 times before, in 100 different manuscripts. They're as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. But he never tires of them. Each time, they're new. Each time, they carry their full weight of meaning. The afternoon light deepens, becoming richer, more amber. Outside the window, Brother Thomas can hear the sounds of the monastery preparing for evening. The brothers who work in the fields are returning, their voices low and tired. The animals are being herded into their pens for the night. Somewhere, the cook is preparing the light evening meal, but Brother Thomas continues his work. There's still an hour before Vespers, the evening prayer, and he's determined to finish this particular section before stopping for the day. It's partly discipline you push yourself to meet your goals, but partly something else. It's the desire to reach a natural stopping point, to complete a unit of meaning before setting down the quill. He's working on the Magnificat now, Mary's great song of praise from the Gospel of Luke. Magnificat anima mea Dominum. My soul doth magnify the Lord. The words are powerful, joyful, and his letters try to capture something of that joy in their perfect formation. His hand is beginning to ache now, a dull throb in his fingers and wrist. But it's a familiar ache, and he ignores it. Only when the work is done will he allow himself to feel the discomfort. The bells for Vespers ring out across the monastery grounds, their sound clear and sweet in the evening air. Brother Thomas completes the final word of the Magnificat, sets down his quill, and carefully caps his inkpots once more. He stands, rolling his shoulders, flexing his fingers. The other scribes are doing the same, each at his own pace. There's a communal sigh, almost the release of a day's concentration. In the church for Vespers, the light is dim now. Candles have been lit, their flames steady in the still air. The evening psalms are sung, the brothers' voices rising and falling in ancient patterns. The sound echoes in the vaulted space, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Brother Thomas sings along, though he's not much of a singer. His voice is reedy, uncertain, but he offers it anyway. Everything here is offered: work, prayer, song, silence. All of it is a gift, a sacrifice, a way of living in devotion. After Vespers comes the evening meal, even simpler than the others. Bread and cheese again, perhaps a handful of nuts, a cup of watered wine. The reading is from the lives of the Desert Fathers, those ancient hermits who lived in the Egyptian wilderness, seeking God through solitude and privation. Brother Thomas listens to the story of St. Simeon Stylites, who lived for 30 years atop a pillar in the Syrian desert. It's a dramatic tale, full of extremes and miracles. But Brother Thomas doesn't aspire to such things. His own form of devotion is quieter, more contained. He serves God with his hands and his patience, one letter at a time. After the meal, there's a brief free period before Compline, the final prayer of the day. Some brothers walk in the cloister, pacing slowly around the covered walkway that surrounds the courtyard. Others sit in their cells, reading or simply resting. Brother Thomas chooses to walk. The evening air is cool now, with a hint of the coming winter. The sky above the courtyard is deep blue, fading to purple in the east. A few stars are beginning to appear. Brother Thomas walks slowly, his hands folded into his sleeves, his eyes down. As he walks, he reviews the day in his mind. The work completed, the prayers offered, the meals taken. It's been a good day, neither exceptional nor difficult, just a good, ordinary day. Tomorrow will be much the same, and the day after that, and the day after that. This is the rhythm of his life, and he's content with it. He thinks about the manuscript, now safely locked away in the armarium, the book cabinet in the scriptorium. Tomorrow, he'll return to it. There are weeks of work remaining, perhaps months. Each day, he'll add a few more pages. Gradually, slowly, the book will grow toward completion. And when it's finished, there will be another manuscript waiting. There's always more work to be done. Books wear out. New copies are needed. Patrons commission special works. The library must be maintained. The work is endless, but that's reassuring rather than daunting. His purpose is clear. His days are full. The final bell of the day rings out the call to Compline, the last prayer service. Brother Thomas files into the church with his brothers one more time. The church is very dark now, lit only by a few candles on the altar. The shadows are deep, and the brothers are barely visible to one another. The service is brief and quiet. The psalms sung at Compline are psalms of rest, of trust, of surrender to sleep and to God's protection through the night. In manus tuas, Domine, commendo spiritum meum. Into thy hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit. The words are a nightly offering, a small death and resurrection. Sleep is like death, a surrender of consciousness, a letting go. And waking is like resurrection, a return to the world, to work, to the ongoing task of living. After Compline, the great silence begins. From now until after morning prayers, no word must be spoken except in the direst emergency. The brothers file out of the church in absolute silence. Their footsteps on the stone floor are the only sound, a quiet shuffling, the soft rustle of wool habits. Brother Thomas returns to his cell for the last time. He removes his habit and folds it carefully, placing it on top of the wooden chest. In his simple linen undertunic, he kneels beside his bed for a final moment of private prayer. But he's tired now, deeply tired, and his prayers are brief. He climbs into bed, pulling the wool blanket over himself. The straw mattress rustles beneath him. The cell is cold, there's no heat except in the warming room, and that's only used on the coldest winter nights. But the blanket is warm enough, and he's accustomed to the chill. He lies on his back, looking up at the darkness where the ceiling must be. He can hear, very faintly, the sounds of other brothers settling into their cells. A distant cough, the creak of a door. Then, gradually, silence. Brother Thomas's mind drifts. He thinks about tomorrow, the manuscript waiting, the morning light, the quiet pleasure of the work. He thinks about his hands, the calluses on his fingers, the slight ache that never quite goes away. He thinks about the letters he formed today, each one a small prayer, a small act of devotion. His breathing slows. His body relaxes into the mattress. The darkness is complete now, absolute. There are no lights anywhere in the monastery except perhaps the sanctuary lamp in the church, burning eternally before the tabernacle. He thinks about the manuscript again, but now his thoughts are becoming dreamlike, fragmentary. The letters on the vellum begin to move in his mind, to dance and rearrange themselves. The black ink becomes liquid, flowing across the page in impossible patterns. He's falling asleep now, drifting down into unconsciousness. It's a pleasant sensation, like sinking into warm water. His breathing is deep and regular. The ache in his hands fades away. The stone cell, the wool blanket, the narrow bed, all of it fades into the darkness. Tomorrow he'll wake to the sound of the bell. He'll rise, dress, and make his way through the dark corridors to the church. He'll sing the morning psalms. He'll eat his simple breakfast. And then he'll return to the scriptorium, to his desk, to the vellum and ink and quills. He'll pick up where he left off, continuing the patient work of copying, letter by letter, line by line. But for now, he sleeps. And in his sleep, perhaps he dreams of letters, perfect letters, black and gleaming, marching in ordered rows across endless sheets of pale vellum. Or perhaps he dreams of something else entirely. It doesn't matter. He's at peace. And so the day ends for Brother Thomas, much as it began in silence, in peace, in the simple rhythm of monastic life. Tomorrow will be the same, and the day after that, and the day after that. The seasons will turn. Winter will come, bringing cold and short days. Then spring will return, with its longer light and warmer air. Summer will bring heat and the harvest. Autumn will come round again. Through it all, Brother Thomas will continue his work in the scriptorium. The manuscript he's working on now will be completed eventually. It will be bound in leather covers, perhaps decorated with brass clasps. It will be delivered to the patron who commissioned it, and Brother Thomas will begin another manuscript. Years will pass. He'll grow older. His hands will become more gnarled, his eyes less sharp. Eventually, he'll have to give up the detailed illumination work and focus on the plain text. And eventually, one day, he'll be too old to work at all. He'll spend his final years in prayer and rest, tended by the younger brothers as he once tended the old men of his youth. And when he dies, another brother will take his place at his desk in the scriptorium. The work will continue. The manuscripts will continue to be made, one letter at a time, one page at a time, one book at a time. This is the way of things in the monastery. Nothing happens quickly. Nothing is rushed. But everything eventually gets done. The slow accumulation of patient effort produces results that last for centuries. The manuscripts Brother Thomas is copying will survive him by hundreds of years. Some of them still exist today, in libraries and museums, their vellum pages yellow with age but still legible, their black ink still clear, their illumination still bright with colour. When we look at these manuscripts, we're looking at the work of men like Brother Thomas, anonymous scribes, whose names we'll never know, but whose labour preserved knowledge and beauty through the centuries. So as we leave Brother Thomas sleeping in his narrow bed, in his cold cell, in his quiet monastery, we can take comfort in the simplicity and purpose of his life. He knew who he was. He knew what his work was. And he did it, day after day, with patience and care and devotion. There's something deeply restful about that. The idea of a life so focused, so simple, so free from the chaos and urgency of modern existence. In our own lives, we're pulled in 1,000 directions, bombarded with information and demands and choices. We're always rushing, always multitasking, always feeling like we're falling behind. But Brother Thomas never rushed. He never multitasked. He simply did one thing at a time, as well as he could do it. And at the end of each day, he could look at the work of his hands and know that it was good. Perhaps that's what we're seeking when we listen to these quiet histories, a glimpse of that simpler way of being, a reminder that life doesn't have to be complicated or frantic, that there's value in patience, in repetition, in doing one small thing well. So let's rest now, like Brother Thomas rests in his cell. Let's allow ourselves to sink into sleep, knowing that tomorrow will come in its own time, and that we'll face it when it arrives. For now, there's only the darkness, the quiet, the gentle rhythm of breathing. Sleep well. And if you dream of quiet rooms filled with sunlight, of quills scratching softly on vellum, of letters forming slowly and perfectly, one at a time, in careful rows across the page. Good night.